So today's guest is Conor Shanosky. He played 12 seasons as a professional soccer player, started with D.C United, then went to Louisville City and capped off his playing career off with the Richmond Kickers. He's from Northern Virginia, D.C. area, and now he's here in Austin coaching with Austin FC and their under-17 Academy. So Conor, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. We appreciate it. And I'll let Nico kick it off.
Yeah, welcome. So Conor, how'd you get your start? What made you initially get into soccer? How does the story start for you?
So it starts with just probably like most people, parents signed me up for soccer, like most people. And so my earliest memories it was soccer and t-ball were like the two, first sports I played. Parents signed me up again. So nothing crazy, but I remember playing t-ball and being frustrated at the pace of the game. And so it was soccer just kind of took off in terms of it was more fun. It was more energetic. I was able to, kind of run around without being stopped. And so that was that was something that it just stuck, I guess. And it's kind of weird because I felt like I was, pretty good at soccer without any, prior experience. It wasn't my dad was out in the backyard with me. It was oh, we're signing you up for soccer one day. And I happened to be good. And from there, we kind of never looked back. I actually, I grew up loving sports and playing all different sports, but it was never organized. I never played in any, youth basketball league or youth football league. It was always soccer. And like I said, it stuck and kind of we felt no need to change it, I guess.
Yeah. When did you start club soccer? Because I think a lot of kids at early ages, they start playing their club travel sports, maybe even as early as 8 years old. When did you kind of get identified to be a travel soccer player?
I think it was probably similar age. I think my earliest memories were U9 was when we started, travel. And obviously that was, I guess it was labeled travel soccer, but it wasn't necessarily, maybe as big as it is nowadays. So you played on the local travel team or whatever and maybe traveled to the neighboring town or whatever. But yeah, it was, I guess, again, labeled travel, but that didn't, mean we were going all over the place, which, maybe it's like that nowadays a little bit more.
Yeah. What was the club that you
I started Sterling, I want to say SYSA. So Sterling Youth Soccer Association was my first club. And like I said, we'd travel to maybe Reston, which was the town 15 minutes over or whatever. So that was kind of the start for me.
Okay. And that's in the Virginia area?
Yep, Northern Virginia.
Okay, nice. And then at what age did you get into D.C. United?
So I only started playing with D.C. United's Youth Academy, DA, which, that's what it was back then. And obviously now it's rebranded into MLS Next. So I started with them my senior year of high school. So it was really interesting. I think probably 2 years prior to that, the DA formed. And so I was still with my, local youth club at the time. It wasn't Sterling anymore. It was Great Falls or whatever, but we had a really good, club team, I guess. And we were state cup, regionals, all that type of stuff. And then, like I said, the DA started and DC United, Academy kind of came onto the scene. But kind of didn't feel any, need to change from, my club team that was, again, doing well. We had, the best players around kind of. But then DC United, approached me and said, hey, do you want to come and, obviously be a part of it? And again, I was my senior year of high school. And so it was I'm going to, sure, I'll do this. Obviously it's attractive because it's DC United and MLS and, but still didn't think much of it, I guess, in terms of what it would mean for my future, which it obviously ended up being pretty consequential. So played a year with DC United's Academy, obviously loved it, did really well, was super fortunate to, do as well as I did and turned that into a professional contract, which almost came out of the blue a little bit.
Yeah, talk about that. You were one of 4 players to sign homegrown contracts. Walk us through that moment of signing with your hometown team.
It was very surreal. Like I said, I maybe give you a little bit of the background just then. It was unexpected almost because it was, again, I was playing with the my club team, and we were really good, and it kind of felt like that was the end of the road a little bit in terms of like my youth soccer. And I was actually committed to go to college at the time. So I committed to go to George Mason, which is, pretty close to my hometown. Probably at the end of my junior year of high school. So again, almost felt like, oh, that's the end of the road. Did it, like we won state cup, all that. It was great. Committed to George Mason, and then, obviously joined D.C United's academy for that last year. And like I said, I did well. And just like, so at the end of the year, I guess I ended up getting called into the under 20 national team. And so after that, like did well with them. And then that's when DC United approached me and were like, offered me the contract and the homegrown contract. And so again, at that moment, it was very surreal. It was, again, I grew up in that area. So to sign with the local team, it was really special. And I think, when you look at it, especially in comparison to nowadays where there's so much more prevalence around, homegrown contracts and these younger kids doing it and having success. So I think they're a little bit more prepared for it. And like I said, it was a little bit more out of the blue for me, which I think comes with, it was like there was such an excitement for me because it was like, it almost didn't feel real.
Yeah.
And so nowadays these younger kids are obviously more prepared for it, but maybe they don't get like that, that, I don't know, it's almost like expected. Whereas for me, it was just like, whoa, this is literally a dream come true. So again, kind of both sides of it where the kids are maybe more prepared than I ever was, but I also kind of got that like, surreal moment.
Yeah. Can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, obviously you're with Austin FC's youth program. Talk about the kids that you work with and then them potentially funneling into, the professional team.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like I said, just the prevalence around it. I mean, it is amazing what these kids have nowadays. And especially like, it's so cool for me because like you said, like I was, one of the first 4 or whatever to kind of do this. And so I get to see it from the beginning and then I work with it now. So it's like, you see how far it's come. Yeah. And like I said, I mean, it's amazing. Like just like the resources that they have. Mm-hmm. So we train over with Austin FC's Academy. We train over at St. David's Performance Center, which is, same building as the first team. And so just like, again, that whole atmosphere of what they have at the first team training facility. And like I said, it's great because these kids they're almost little professionals right now, And so they get like the preparation. They understand what it's like. They understand kind of the demands of, professional soccer. But like I said, you do miss a little bit of the element of like I said, just the surrealness. I remember for me, it meant so much because it was unexpected. And I was kind of one of the first ones to do it. And so I guess any time for me where I was able to like wear the DC United, jersey for the first time, even with the academy, it was so awesome. And I know the kids get that nowadays, but they just, they get it from so much younger and they kind of grow up with it. Whereas for me, it was like out of the blue, unexpected. I do it my senior year of high school. It was awesome. And then like that turns into a professional contract. And again, the surrealness around it was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. 10 years ago, it was like super rare to hear about someone that young to get signed. So what an experience. Yeah. Like now the system is built specifically for homegrown players, right? We want to prepare them almost as early as 16, 17 years old to actually get their debut. Kind of like guys like Owen Wolf, right? Yeah. Coming out of the homegrown system, touching the field, getting that experience. What are you seeing as far as preparation kind of like on a daily basis that these youth players are getting that you didn't see 10 years ago? Like, are they doing extra video sessions on, how they played in the previous game? Are they doing, significant more exercises or things like that? Can you kind of explain like, hey, what does a day in the life look like for one of your players at Austin FC?
Yeah, no, it's pretty much what you just said. Like the amount of video session that is prevalent nowadays is so much more than, like you said, 10 years ago when I was starting out doing it. And just like, I guess that as a whole, like the technology side of things has grown so much in terms of, sports science. And now they have, such like wearable technology with the GPS. So they're like all of their physical data is tracked. So like the amount of sprints they're doing, high intensity distance covered, like all these new metrics that have come into the game. Like it's, like I said, it's happening with these younger kids now, whereas 10 years ago, it was like, none of that was tracked. There was no technology around it.
Yeah.
The video wasn't around. And so now like, you see a bunch of these different like, basically sports cameras that track all the video. And that is even getting more high tech where like, you can create highlights and different things, and the games are clipped automatically for you. So like, yeah, there's, on a daily basis, they're getting info from us, like as coaches. They're doing stuff on their own in terms of the video, and they'll bring it to us a lot, and we'll go over their video clips and vice versa, like I said. And then, like I said, they're having the same stuff with the strength and conditioning coach in terms of GPS data. What's that saying? Then there's like other sorts of analysis stuff that we can kind of track now in terms of statistics. And like I said, the prevalence of statistics in the modern game is just so much more than what it used to be. So it's really cool. And like I said, it's almost like they're little professionals now, because they're getting the same stuff, and obviously at the professional level it's even more advanced, but they're certainly getting all of it, as young as 13, 14 years old.
Yeah. And congratulations on obtaining your B license.
Thank you.
I know that that's definitely a really challenging coaching course, and it's definitely an expectation when you come into a professional environment on the level of credentials that you need to touch the field and start to create these youth professional players. Walk us through that process of having to go through what the UEFA B license is now and applying some of this new technology to the U.S. coaching environment.
Yeah, no. So even like the licenses, when we talk about things being more advanced, like, so I guess, you hear stories of people who have their licenses that got them, I don't know, 10 years ago or whatever. And it was like, oh, I did this 10-day course in the off season or whatever, for some of the people that did it like while they were playing. And so it was like this real, I don't want to say easy, but it was definitely a less time consuming process to what it is now. So like I said, now it's a 6-month process where you have to be coaching full time as well. So it's not something that you could just do like in the off season and, say, hey, I want to get my B license, and in 10 days you'll have it. You're doing it for 6 months. You're filming assignments. You're sending stuff in that pretty much for the entire 6 months, like at least once a week, you're doing stuff. You're meeting. We met in Kansas City, which is like where, U.S. Soccer has their headquarters and stuff. So you get to see all that. And we actually had the national team was training there when we were there last time. So we got to watch like some of their training session and speak to Greg Berhalter and have that experience as well, which was really, really cool. But yeah, like I said, just on track with everything else in terms of the complexity that is required nowadays is definitely a lot more than what it used to be, which is good because you're seeing obviously coaches with much more knowledge and just probably a more complex thought process in how they do things, which is I would say that's kind of the big thing that they're trying to gear you towards. Is it's not so much, hey, you have to do it this way. It's like, okay, well, if you are going to do it this way, kind of what are the reasons why? And so they definitely make you think along those lines. And like I said, it can be pretty rigorous, and they'll push back and give you questions and say, hey, like, why are you doing that? But at the end of the day, it does make you, a better coach, or at least somebody that has to think in a pretty logical order in terms of doing what you want to do as a coach.
We recently spoke with Dave Tenney over at Austin FC, and he was talking a lot about, players can have this amazing skill set, be these amazing soccer players, but the mental side of the game is almost equally as important. Throughout your playing career and even like present day, how are you helping, whether it's in your training sessions or coaching, like helping players improve their mental game?
No, it's a really good question, and it's cool that, maybe Dave brought up a little bit of that because, like you said, it's just so prevalent. And so for me, at least, I always felt as a player, maybe that was an area I lacked a little bit. And like I said, because, for me, I started my playing career out of the blue a little bit. And So you're not fully prepared for the challenges of what it means to be a professional soccer player sometimes. And I think it was really positive, but my life was pretty much flipped upside down the day I signed a professional contract. And that was, again, it was really positive. It was something I loved, but because I loved it so much, it meant if things didn't go my way, it was hard. And it took its toll on me. I was, obviously disappointed, and it was hard not to beat myself up if I made a mistake. And so I think for me now is, I was able to go through that. And hopefully now I'm able to kind of impart some of that wisdom on, these younger kids. Is like, look, it's going to be a long process. There's going to be maybe more downs than ups at times.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, what can we do to make that a little bit easier on you than hopefully it was on me at times? Because like I said, it was definitely challenging. And I think not shying away from the fact that it is going to be hard at times is important. And like you said, look, this is now a huge part of the game, like mentally, and your I guess your mental strength and toughness at times, but also being okay with saying, look, I made a mistake. This sucks, and that's okay, And you also maybe see a little bit more on the negative side of like there's just so much attention around everything nowadays, which means more pressure, and there's the whole online thing with like social media, and if you're a young player, and that can be hard. And I remember it was hard for me the first time I saw somebody, saying stuff online, maybe negatively about me. It was hard to see and hear. And then, as you get older, you're able to kind of take it with a grain of salt a little bit and say, look, maybe it's just an internet troll and not something I should be reading and taking seriously. But again, unless you kind of go through that, of course it's going to be hard. So no, I think it's a really good question, and obviously a really good point for any athlete nowadays is, look, this is something that should definitely be considered, and trying to find good ways of dealing with it and managing it is going to be as important as any on-field training that you do,
So a lot of local players here in Austin have the opportunity to do technical training with you. So that kind of moves you from the environment of the Austin FC kind of professional coaching development into more technical training, where you kind of get players who are, they're getting exposed to the local grassroots coach. They don't have the same credentials as you. What are some of the things that you see are differentiated from those players, and what they're asking from you versus how you're going about coaching the youth professionals? I'll kind of give you an example. When we have some young females out here who are actually playing at some pretty competitive levels, they'll come to me and say, oh, hey, Nico, or a parent will come up to me and say, hey, we just need to get her confidence up, right? And a lot of these players aren't necessarily bad players. They might just come to you to just get some level of encouragement, right? So it'd be interesting to kind of get your viewpoint on, how you go about coaching some of these grassroots players, continue to develop their confidence through some of the exercises that you give them.
Yeah, again, I think it's a really good point and a really good question. I get the same thing a lot, is like, maybe they're not necessarily coming to me for confidence, but it definitely like gets brought up, or it's something that maybe I've noticed that they lack in confidence a little bit, and then I take that as like, okay, well, how can I build up their confidence? And I think just some of the more individualized training is such a good platform for that. And it's something I used a lot, like even in my playing career, in terms of, okay, like what were the things I could go back to if I felt like I was struggling? And I always felt like my technique was one of those things. Like if, things aren't going well in whatever other sense of the game, technically I'm normally pretty good. Or if I'm not, maybe I'm feeling I'm lacking technically currently. So what can I kind of go back to where I am good technically? And so I think a huge part of doing that, and like I said, some of the individual stuff should be based around, okay, like what are the tools that you can start to build and bring into your arsenal in order to be like, okay, if I am lacking confidence, I can always go back to this like type of training session maybe where I start to feel sharp again, and I know I can do that, and I know I can do it very proficiently, and then obviously building on that and making sure that becomes like a broad, I guess, arsenal or toolkit that you can go back to and use. But I definitely find, like you said, the same thing where it's like, if you do give players that, you'd be surprised at how much more confident they come out of, either the training session or the period of time that they are working with you. They come out of it in a much better and probably more confident light, because it's very individualized. It's very encouraging. I think I always try to put that like spin on it. Like, hey, you're out here working. I'm going to give you as much encouragement as possible. I think that's one of my strengths. And at times with like you said, I have to balance it with then like, okay, when I'm working with, the academy team and stuff, like maybe I need to be a little bit more like cunning and maybe a little bit more like critical, not critical in a bad way, but like, deciphering, okay, this maybe needs to be improved. Whereas with the individual stuff, like I want to be super positive, and I want to like bring my energy towards it, and I want them to feel like they're getting kind of all of me. And like I said, I balance that between both roles. But I find it just very important and hopefully a strength of mine, where it's like, okay, you should be getting my passion, and you should be getting my energy and, my encouragement as well.
Yeah. One of the things that I find really interesting is the involvement of parents when they come to you for training. What's the difference between the parent involvement at the youth professional level versus the grassroots level? Are they even involved? Is there continued education for the parents as they're watching their kids develop? Kind of talk us through that.
Yeah, so there's, I don't know if it's an education, but I think there's, and this maybe goes to people higher up than me that kind of deal with like what the expectations are for the parents. But there's definitely that, like some sort of expectation of like, hey, there's, you're not allowed to be on the sideline coaching your kid kind of thing. Like we really discourage that. And so we kind of need like a space to operate as coaches and staff. And then, so like you said, I think one of the problems with some of the individual training can be what you said, like parents want to almost take part in the process too much. And I always feel like, you're kind of working with me to allow me to like put my imprint on it and allow me to coach. And so I think, I hope I don't sound too negative when I say this, but sometimes parents like want to say, hey, my kid needs to work on such and such, and they want to see like you working on such and such. And in reality, they need to be working on like almost a more general skill set that will then help them. If they like, the common one is we want our kid to like shoot the ball harder or something. And it's like, okay, that's fine, but they need to then work on their coordination and their balance, their control of the ball, the control of their own body in order to shoot the ball harder. But then like they want to see you, okay, I want 100 shots and I want them to be progressively harder.
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't know if that's how it works kind of thing. So maybe you should,
Yeah.
Ideally you give me some of the platform to hopefully try my way, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Scoring goals is the tip of the iceberg, and like there's a whole fundamental, like probably 100 things you have to work on before you can score the goal, right? Yeah, so it's like educating the parents in that aspect. But
you touched on, your strengths and what you bring to the table in your training and coaching. But what do you feel prepared you most for your time in the MLS?
I would say, I think like, when I talk about my strengths, and I think just like I said, having a general understanding of things, I think was maybe what prepared me most and especially as you get older, you start to be like, a little bit more, I guess, zoomed out in your thought process, which really helps. And, ideally I'm taking that and even growing with it now, but just when you're able to zoom out a little bit more and get away from just like, I think it's natural to have a little bit of tunnel vision when you're so focused on something. And again, maybe it's because I'm starting to get older and I'm starting to see things from a different perspective, and hopefully that continues. And I'm sure I still do get very zoomed in on something and a little bit of tunnel vision. But definitely trying to use that thought process of like, okay, zoom out a little bit here. What's the bigger picture? Where am I trying to go with this? How can I maybe slow down and reassess if I need to, and just utilizing that as a thought process to kind of recenter at times when you do feel like, okay, maybe you're a little bit too zoomed in on something or getting a little bit stuck. I think that's something that again, as I got older in my playing career, that helped a little bit. And like I said, hopefully it continues now as a coach.
You talked about, maybe the problem, or not the problem, but the thing that the parents, want their child to work on, and it being a bigger problem, like they need to work on XYZ in order to get to like the certain level that they're trying to improve upon. What would you say is like the overall biggest thing when you are training, like that parents are looking for their child to improve upon?
I think, like Nico said, scoring goals and that tip of the iceberg thing is what people get stuck on. And like I said, now it's, as somebody that's been super involved in soccer and in coaching, and I'm able to have a little bit more of that zoomed out perspective, I can kind of take away from, and parents are emotional, obviously. So if they see their kid not starting or not scoring as much as somebody else's kid, or, whatever, not getting as much success, they get very, either disappointed or wanting improvement in one specific area. And at times I even have to say, like, wow, like your kid's doing great. Like I can see they have like really good motor skills. They're very coordinated. And, so some of the growth that you want as a parent is going to come. It's just like, maybe it's going to come a little bit later, but you already have a better base than maybe most of these kids who are either bigger and stronger, again, which is going to be natural because of, somebody's a little bit older, or they were born, a little bit earlier in the cycle, type of thing. So again, I think it's probably hard for the parents from the emotional side of, if they see their kid not getting as much success or accolades, they naturally want to fix it. And I get that completely. But like I said, sometimes you have to almost remind them, hey, like they're doing great. They have a good base here. Let's not forget that kind of thing.
Yeah. Do you ever come across like burnout with your clients? I mean, some of them start at such an early age. I mean, you were starting at toddler, probably when you were walking, right? How do you help them to either avoid a burnout or, I guess, improve a burnout, if you will?
I think, so one thing for me is like I said, and it goes back to a little bit like the encouragement side of stuff. Like hopefully they can, one thing I try to do is make it fun, so, and that's another thing maybe you have to balance with parents, and why ideally maybe they're not as involved so much, because certain times it's like the parents want to see, like, again, you working on something specific, but that might not be the most fun at times. So it's like allowing them to have some fun. And I mean, this goes to any level. I remember even as a professional, like when you're playing, you want it to be fun. And I think that's what draws me to coaching is like, you're going to come in and you have to train pretty much every single day. Like, if you want to be a competitive player, you're going to train every single day. So how can it be like fun, competitive, but competitive like in a fair, good, balanced way? And like, how can you make it fresh and have new ideas? So especially with the individual stuff, like I try to let them have fun, and I think I do a good job of that, of like making little competitions, but making sure that like if we are going to do a competition that, I can keep score and they can like really know that it's not just, competition for the sake of it. Like we're going to do this and try to utilize it. Yeah. And so like I said, even at all age groups or all levels, or, whether it's team environment or individual, it should be fun. And there should be a sense of like, you should enjoy this, hopefully. And if you need a break, like that's fine. But let's try to avoid burnout because you like what you're doing,
Yeah.
When it comes to keeping score, right, at what age would you say the score matters, right? So when we think about some of the youth development, right, and these, parents in Texas are special. We know that they're very competitive. They want to win all the time. It's like ingrained inside of the local community here, which I love about them. But when we think about child development, right, and when the score actually matters, can you kind of, give us your thoughts on, at what age does it really matter? Are you actually getting scouted? Are you actually getting, looks at the next level, and what that looks like for youth players?
Yeah, so I think in terms of a specific age, I don't know if there's like one specific age in which it like all of a sudden, the score matters type of thing, or I think like we have with MLS Next, like the under 13s are the first age group of MLS Next, which is maybe a good like starting point on, okay, like now being competitive and, keeping scores should start to matter a little bit more. But we also have it as like, it's part of I think it's the development phase or whatever. And, then when you get to the under 15s and under 17s, it's called the performance phase, where obviously keeping score and being competitive and scouting and colleges and professional scouts, like all that's going to matter a little bit more, naturally. But I think it kind of goes back to like we were talking about before in terms of like, a kid could be doing really well, but they don't have that like tip of the iceberg speed or shooting or like scoring goals kind of thing. And it's like, parents or people or even the kid themselves can get so caught up in that. And it's like giving them the reminder, like we talked about, of, hey, like you're doing great here. Once you hit this growth spurt, or once, like the game's going to kind of change a little bit and it's going to be more technical than physical. And you're going to be in a good place for that. I think, like you said, is the reason we need to make sure that we're not maybe keeping score too early and allowing for development and allowing for, I guess like a more holistic development where we're focused on some of these like general traits that are going to transfer to when you get older, and making sure that is important, and, not who's scoring the most goals and who's kicking the hardest kind of thing.
Absolutely. And it's obvious you love coaching and you love to develop players. I mean, what are your goals with coaching? Like what do you aspire to be to? What's kind of your thought process there?
So I think, ambitiously speaking, I'd love to coach professionally one day. It can be a little bit hard to maybe view, that far down the career path, I guess. And, I'm somebody that at times, like I want to, focus on the present with still like the end goal in mind kind of thing, and not get too caught up on that like end goal and then feel like, oh, I'm disappointed if I don't reach that. But at the same time, I think it is important to have that like, okay, this is what I'm shooting for and this is why kind of thing, and not shying away from that. So I think I'm definitely, wanting to be a professional coach one day, and what level that's at, or whether that's a head coach or an assistant coach, like who knows kind of. But I think for me, the way I kind of phrase it or talk about it is, when you have that as a player where you're involved in that atmosphere, it's a little bit addicting. And I'm sure most people now, like if you go to Q2 on a match day, it's pretty incredible. And again, it's addicting. So, of course I'm going to, like, I see that, and there's always going to be that part of me, inside where I'm like, shoot, I'd love to be, back involved in that. And, back having a little bit more of a part of that like professional atmosphere kind of thing. And so that definitely is my end goal. And I guess for me, it's like I said, trying to balance, not getting too caught up in that and kind of focusing on the present, but also not shying away from it and saying, hey, I'm going to give this a shot and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. What do you think it's done for the community now having their first professional sports team?
I mean, it's incredible. I think, if you haven't been to a game at Q2, it's like, you should get there kind of thing. It's amazing. That the atmosphere is just incredible. And, I say with my fiancé now, like, I want to go to every single game. And I think sometimes she's like, can we do something else on a Saturday? But I love it. And so it's just incredible. The whole atmosphere, like I said, for me coming from the soccer background, obviously it's maybe a little bit more appealing to me and kind of, my soul in terms of how much I love the game. But I always say, like, how can you not enjoy this? Like, the atmosphere is awesome. The game is awesome. Like, the quality of the game and the league has grown so much, even from when I started in MLS. So it's definitely something that, like, I think sports in general, like I love sports, all sports. And so just like being around it and having something to look forward to. And, I know like being a fan is a silly thing sometimes, but it's also awesome. Like just to, have a common rooting interest is, for me, so enjoyable.
Yeah, no, I've been here almost a year. We were talking before the interview, and Nico is a season ticket holder. And the first game, like, what was it? Like, they welcomed all season ticket holders to come out for and to like see the stadium. I'm like, this is unreal. Like they did such a great job from like top to bottom. Even if you're not a soccer fan, like it's just amazing. Like, my mind was just like blown.
Yeah, it's definitely a special place.
Yeah. Well, you also mentioned too your fiance. Y'all got engaged recently. Congrats.
Thank you.
Me personally, I want to know how you guys met.
Oh God, it's a very fitting story, I will say. So at the time, she was with the Washington Spirit in NWSL, and I was with the Richmond Kickers. So in USL, which is, you know, obviously like for those that don't know, I guess like the best way of phrasing it is like minor, you know, one of the minor league teams. And so Richmond is 2 hours south of Washington, D.C. And so her team was coming down to Richmond for a preseason game. And so they were using our stadium. And me being from D.C., like I knew, you know, some of her teammates at the time, and I think I knew some of her staff members. And so after the game, I was kind of like waiting around to say hi to some people. And so like she comes off the field and we get introduced by like, you know, again, I think one of their staff members who I knew.
Yeah.
And so like we get introduced and then, you know, we start going out a little bit and hanging out a little bit more. And then we like look back and even realize, so she had the same locker or she had my locker, I guess, at our stadium. So it was a little bit like,
it was meant to be.
It was, yeah, like a soccer
coincidence,
meant to be kind of thing.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. So I know Nico and I, in our research, were like, how does one as a professional, like, how do you balance that? I mean, both of y'all had amazing careers. How do you balance making a relationship work?
So this is interesting. I have the thought process that like, okay, you know, you think now I'm dating a soccer player, right? And so I'm like, okay, awesome. Like, you know, probably what I dreamed of as a kid. And then you get into it and like you realize that we just have the exact same problems. Like there's no like balance because like if she's not playing, then, you know, or say I was playing and she wasn't playing. Yeah. Now I'm a little bit like unhappy for her because like I know exactly what that's like to not be playing.
Yep.
And so you end up, kind of dealing with the same problems. And there's not that like, you know, where you can kind of just get your mind away from it because one person does something completely different. Yep. So that's a little bit interesting. And I say it, you know, tongue in cheek a little bit because it's still awesome. And it's still great that we can kind of share, you know, the experiences. And again, she knows exactly what it's like when I'm unhappy about something and vice versa. So there's that, but there's also like, I like to say a little bit of a downside because you have the same problems just now times 2.
Yeah.
At least you guys get to train together.
Yes.
So
that's true.
Kind of in some research, I mean, I you know, who knows if the internet's real, right? But I saw that a little blurb that you guys actually went to Scotland together.
Correct.
What was that experience like? Kind of, you know, understanding, hey, what the U.S. kind of culture is like versus going to Scotland. Tell us a little bit about that.
It was quite the experience. A little bit short-lived, but so we end up going to Scotland. Meg has an opportunity to sign with one of the big clubs in Scotland. So she signs with Celtic, and like the idea was, I was playing at the time in Richmond, and like we kind of took a chance, and I was ready for something new at the time. But the idea was like I was going to go with her, and you know, at this point in our relationship, we wanted to stay together, and we had kind of done distance before, and especially with soccer, it was, you know, the schedules were hard to line up, and we were like, okay, maybe it seems like a good time to do something together, and kind of let's put, you know, this first, and we went to Scotland, and you know, it was great for her. Like she gets settled in. I think she was really enjoying the team and the coach, and I think really excited about kind of a new opportunity in her career. And so from that perspective, it was going really well. And she ends up tearing her ACL, which cut everything short. So that was definitely a bummer. And I think a bummer for her because like I said, she was really in a good space, I think, in terms of like love the team, love the coach. We love both like being in Scotland and experiencing something new, and that whole atmosphere around just like what, you know, soccer means to them and what it means in Europe was definitely different. So that was a little bit sad and kind of cut short our journey. And then we came back, obviously to the States and settled in Southern California for a bit. And we were like kind of trying to figure out, okay, like what's next kind of thing. And I was maybe going to continue playing. She was obviously having to rehab for her ACL. And we just kind of decided like nothing playing wise was really making sense for me at the time, and started to get into coaching and kind of wanted to pursue that a little bit more. And, eventually it led us here to Austin, and I had the opportunity to kind of come in with the academy and start with Austin FC's academy. And that kind of leads us to now.
And it also, you said you've been out here about a year now. When did the idea or desire to create this private training program that both you and Meg now run, both in person, and do y'all still do it on Zoom?
We haven't done a Zoom in a while, actually, but it was, I'm sure there will be another one. It was like the Zoom stuff came up kind of through COVID. Yeah. I think that's actually probably when, answering the question, probably when we both started to like put together our training business. And so, like I said, through COVID, it was like there was this, huge demand for anything to do, I guess.
Besides Tiger King.
Yeah, exactly. Besides, Netflix binge watching. And so we were like, people were asking us, hey, like, what do you think about doing a session? And we were kind of like bouncing back and forth between like, I think at the time she was maybe in Houston and I was in Richmond or whatever it was. So we were getting on Zoom, and like I said, there was just a huge demand for it. And that was, kind of continued through COVID, and we loved it. It was still a great way to like get like, obviously you couldn't do as much as you would otherwise be able to do out on the field, but we were like doing stuff in our living room with like ball mastery and technical skills, and it was still super fun. I think the kids loved it. And so, that kind of happened through COVID, and then it continued with, us doing obviously more stuff in person. And then when me and Meg were in the same city again, and especially when we, after we came back from Scotland and kind of started to coach a little bit more, it was, again, became very prevalent. Southern California was definitely a hotbed for youth soccer. And so there was just a lot of demand for it. And we were doing a ton of sessions and having some pretty good success with it. And that kind of was, the beginning of us doing it and continuing to do it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. I know you spoke to some of your strengths earlier, but with your training and Meg alongside you, what would you say sets y'all apart from other trainers or other people trying to do similar things?
So I think the cool thing for us is that we both played. We both played professionally, and it's also cool that we have like her experiences that are a little bit different than mine, but obviously they're naturally going to be similar. And I think we both kind of share the same message of what we were talking about earlier, like trying to make it fun and encouraging. And I think, especially with her, like she's really good at, relating to a lot of people in terms of like, okay, how can this be fun for you? How can you like enjoy this? Like what do you enjoy as a human being as well? Or what do you enjoy as a teenager? And how can we make sure that, when you come to us, you're having, again, a fun, positive experience. And so we share that, and I think we really try to push that forward, and obviously not at the expense of working hard and doing what needs to be done, but trying to combine those two things where it's like, okay, we're going to work hard, but we're also going to do so in a way that, you enjoy coming to us. And I think most people would say they do enjoy it, and at least hopefully they do.
Client retention is important.
That's right.
There's like, I think what a lot of players need to understand is like look at the experience of the technical trainer, because there's some people out there that like, I mean, you see it on Instagram,
TikTok.
There are these TikTok, whatever it is. There's these technical trainers out there, and they have you like juggling a tennis ball while dribbling the soccer ball while jumping through like, I don't know, weird circles. Like like sometimes I look at these things and it looks really cool on camera, but like the actual like functionality of it, you can't apply that to the field. Right. What are your thoughts on some of these Instagram trainers that you see out there?
I have strong thoughts on it. Like, probably similar to like you were just saying is like, okay, well, like what's the functionality of this? And then also like, so for me, like I think of myself as pretty technical and skillful, but all of the stuff that I have in terms of like skills was like through me kind of just self-exploring with the ball and like finding stuff from like some of the people I enjoyed watching on TV, like in terms of if I loved watching Neymar play, like trying to kind of replicate some of the stuff he did. And it wasn't just like, I think now it's like you're saying, it turned into this like Instagram tutorial, juggle a tennis ball, flip it on your head and spin around 3 times. And it's like, well, you know, I guess maybe that takes some skill, but where is like the personal element to it? Like, I think self-exploration should be the big part of it. And like I said, like, you know, some of the skills I have and I really enjoy are just through like me being out with the ball and one thing turned into another thing. Or like I said, I saw something that I really liked and then I, you know, put my own spin on it kind of thing. So for me, it's getting away from like, oh, here's this Instagram tutorial and okay, find what you like and then find, you know, again, maybe how you can put your own personal spin on it. And so, yeah, I don't think we're doing anybody any favors if we just tell them, hey, do this. Here's step 1, step 2, and step 3. It's like, okay, here's a guiding process. Let you figure out like, what do you like? What type of player do you like? I think like watching the game becomes really important in that regard. Like finding out, okay, I like this player because he's skillful, or I like this player because his passing, or I like, you know, somebody else because of his leadership, or, you know, whatever it is. You need to find what's personal to you and decide why you like that, and then try to, you know, either implement it yourself or implement it with your own, you know, spin or twist.
Who did you watch? Who was your go-to guy growing up that you watched? You're like, I want to be that player.
So I'm interesting, and you know, most people would tell you this. Like I was a center back, right? So you know, bred and like in front of defending and no nonsense kind of thing. But like I loved the skillful players. So I was like kind of a mismatch in terms of like I love like Neymar and Pogba and, you know, even before that like Ronaldinho, and now like Kevin De Bruyne and all these like attacking players, which, you know, doesn't fit who I was as a player at all. But again, it's still like, again, I was now having to find, okay, like I love, you know, some of these more attacking players or some of these, you know, more flair players, but I'm a center back. So how can I take like a little bit of what they have and add it to my game without losing, okay, I'm a center back. I need to be, you know, I still need to do X, Y, and Z in terms of defending and kind of no nonsense stuff. I can't just be back here doing whatever I want. But like I said, still taking a little bit of what I like from them and making it kind of personal to who I was as a player.
You've kind of alluded to it over the course of our conversation, but like the mental side of things and people doing things for social media's sake, how have you seen social media affect your players? Because obviously the technology has drastically changed over the last like 10 years when you were playing. Yeah. How have you seen it affect your present day players?
No, it's again, a really good question. I think there's an importance to like, you know, being you know, progressive and up to date with like, okay, like Instagram and these technologies are a big part of, you know, what it's like nowadays for kids or for anyone. You know, you see it with the top professional players. They're all like branding and doing this type of stuff. But it's like, okay, like how can you take that, but also not lose sight of the fact of like, okay, like what we love is soccer. You know, let's not lose it for this Instagram, you know, tutorial, or let's not like be more focused on looking nice on Instagram than like enjoying each other and enjoying playing. And so for me, I guess it's, again, balancing like, you know, there's obviously a benefit to social media and I use it and I like it. But not having it take away from, you know, what we truly love, or take away from like true connection, I guess, to your teammates or to each other, or again, to the game, and making sure you don't lose sight of, you know, what's important kind of.
Yeah. Well, we like to wrap up our interviews with a little rapid fire. I think we might mention this to you. So don't worry, it's not like super intense, very lighthearted, but just say the first thing that kind of pops into your mind. I think one on here gives you options, so you have options on one of them. But we're just going to throw them at you. Okay, favorite city you played in?
D.C.
Best Netflix series of all time?
Prison Break.
Go-to hype or workout song?
Scared to Be Lonely, Martin Garrix.
I'm going to have to listen to that one. Favorite restaurant in Austin?
Gosh, I want to try some of the barbecue ones, but I haven't been yet.
Terry Black's.
I haven't been.
That's good.
But I've had it. Like I had it in Dallas.
Okay.
So can I still say that?
Sure.
Terry
Yeah,
Black's.
we'll let that one.
I love barbecue.
So good.
I'm in the right place, I guess.
You're in the right place. There's a few more spots. Okay, if you didn't coach soccer, what would you want to do?
Be a lawyer.
That's impressive.
I don't know if I could, but you didn't ask what I would be doing. You said what I would want to be doing.
You're like, I could be the most awesome lawyer. Okay, favorite soccer player? You kind of alluded to a few just a minute ago, but favorite soccer player growing up?
Neymar.
What sport other than soccer do you enjoy watching most?
Ooh, probably NFL.
Okay, who's your team?
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay.
I was born in Pittsburgh.
Wait,
but
don't
then,
you guys play tonight? Good luck.
Oh, we do. Thursday night. That's right.
Yeah. I have Chubb, so
Ooh.
I fancy. Yeah. I won last week. I'm
This
actually 2-0.
is a soccer podcast.
Sorry.
I'm 0-2. So.
Listen.
Let's not go too far down that because I'm not doing great in fantasy.
Hey, honestly, I might jinx myself, but hopefully not. We'll knock on wood. Okay, final question. Favorite city you've lived in?
Fort Lauderdale.
I've got one more question for you. Messi or Ronaldo?
Messi.
Okay. That's the most important one.
And we'll end it there. Conor, thank you again. We so
you guys.
appreciate your time. Our listeners can find us on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. Follow us on Instagram at Train ATX. And then Conor, if you want to plug your Instagram channels.
Conor Shan is my personal Instagram, and then T2T Pro Soccer Training, I think I have that right. Is our is mine and my fiancé Megan Crosson's business page.
Awesome. Well, yeah, guys, stay tuned for the interview, and we'll see you next time.